one night I was watching what is happening, decided, because it's just, I feel it very strange to know that I'm not there. And actually I cannot decide anything, because there's no one to decide and how to deal with daily life with this knowledge, with this feeling. That's how it is. Because it doesn't matter if I do this or that, because I'm not doing it anyway.
It might matter. In the dream, if there is a dream leak in the dream roof of your dream house, it might very much matter whether you employ a dream builder to repair it or not.
Yeah, but it's just a dream.
Well,
Just.
it's just a dream, and it's as real as anything gets. I'm not sure if this relates directly to what you're saying. Let's see. But I think what sometimes happens is the mind, and very much the mind. I mean, we've been talking about the mind all afternoon, so let's remind ourselves the mind that doesn't exist, but nevertheless the mind that feels itself to exist, gets hold of concepts about this, and then uses those concepts to set about ruining their life. And I don't mean that in the way that I meant seeing this ruins your life. Let me give you one real example and see if it relates to what you're saying. I had a series of emails from somebody in America, right? And they very involved with this, lots of concepts about it and so forth. So one of the main concepts they got, I don't know where from, was that, the universe will now support me. They didn't like their job, so they gave up their job, knowing that the universe would support them. I suppose the universe did support them. It supported them in plunging into poverty. So then they were threatened with eviction from their apartment, and they had to leave their apartment and get a much smaller apartment. And still they trusted that the universe would support them, and the universe continued to support their plunge into poverty. It's a common story, this. The last email, phone call actually, it wasn't an email, the last phone call I got from him, he was about to be evicted from the smaller apartment, and he had no money, and he had just been down, I don't know which part of the States this was in, he had just been down to the local park to look at Tent City, the place where the homeless were living, and so that's where I'm going to be next week. So the mind can do all sorts of foolish things. There's a traditional story, isn't there? I'm not sure if I can remember it. There's a traditional story, they used to tell it in the Muktananda. Well, Muktananda used to tell it, but I'm sure it's traditional than that, about the guy that's walking down the street saying, God is love, all is one, I am one with the universe, all is love. And the people came rushing round the corner saying, run, run, there is a mad elephant coming. And they all raced off, and the guy just kept on walking down the street saying, all is one, I am one, the elephant is one, all is love. And of course, walked round the corner, and there was the mad elephant, which promptly trampled him to death. And as he died, how can this be, if all is one? And of course, somebody shouted from the sidewalk, from the safety of the other side of the fence, but the people who told you to run from the elephant, they also were one. They were also part of oneness. Does that make sense? So, As I've said before, this makes no difference. Life just goes on. As the Buddhists say, before liberation, hewing wood, after liberation, hewing wood, before liberation, repairing the roof, or getting rained on, after liberation, repairing the roof or getting rained on. Why should this make any difference? As to what you started with, what's it feel like in terms of decisions? It's difficult to put into words. It's very frustrating. I used to ask that question of certain characters and was never satisfied with their answer. It's very difficult to put into words. Things happen, stuff comes up. Body gets on train to go to Munich. I don't know why. It just does. There's the menu. Shall it be the fish or shall it be the meat? I'll have the meat. I don't know what happens. Life just goes on. Sorry, is that?
Can you say what makes the difference? The difference is the identification.
The difference is the collapse of the sense of contraction and the collapse of the sense of separation. And it's just impossible to describe it any more than that. What it brings is the end of searching and just seeing through all the stories. It brings an end of searching because it's seen that there's nothing to search for, because this is already all there is. This is already complete. It's really very difficult to say anything else. And life goes on. Toothache is still toothache. Hunger is still hunger. Maybe sadness is still sadness. Everything can still go on. I've noticed here, and in talking to others, that a certain amount of neurosis tends to drop away. I've noticed here, and I've talked to others, that here boredom and depression do not arise. I have a theory about why that is, but it's only a theory. I just notice that they don't happen anymore. They could do. It could happen tonight, it could happen tomorrow. Anything can happen, anything's possible, but I notice that they don't happen. Every other feeling still arises. But there's a tendency, both here and with others I've spoken to, for those feelings to become more raw, more immediate, less neurotic, sometimes stronger, and less long-lasting. That seems to be quite common. And again, I have theories about why that is, but they're just theories. My theory is that neurosis makes feelings hang around for longer, but makes them weaker. We don't like uncomfortable feelings. The more neurotic we are, the more we tend to, if you like, suppress neurotic feelings, and the result of that is that they hang around for longer. Nobody has ever been able to maintain rage, which is a non-neurotic form of anger, for as long as irritation, which is a neurotic form of anger. You meet people who've been irritated for years. I don't know if this will work in Germany, but in England, doctors diagnose certain people with suffering from a dysfunction called IBS, which I say stands for irritable brain syndrome. I'm sure we've all met people who've been irritable for the last 20 years, almost without a break. You've never met anybody who's been in a rage for 20 years. It's too exhausting. So the neurotic person is very good at attenuating or weakening feelings so they're not as uncomfortable and they're not as threatening. But the cost of that is they tend to get stuck and they last longer. So if there's less neurosis, then feelings will have a tendency to get stronger but be over quicker. If there were a choice, I'd say if you prefer less uncomfortable feelings and you don't mind them hanging around for longer, then go for being a person. If you'd rather have stronger feelings but have them over quicker, go for liberation. But that's nonsense because, of course, you can't do either.
Someone I know once said, I prefer short suffering to long suffering.
Yes. But short suffering is often stronger suffering.
Absolutely.
I'd say the same.
Yeah, I gather.
A friend of mine went on a singles holiday once and met this woman he was talking to, got to know her by the swimming pool, and at one point she said, "Oh, Matthew," she said, "I could sulk for England." So that's a very neurotic statement.
I could sulk for England.
Sulk. Nothing wrong with it? Sulk. Can somebody translate that into German? You know, sulking is a neurotic form of anger. It's a very attenuated, suppressed form of anger, and it can go on. Well, it can go on forever. It can go on for as long. It can go on until finally the psychophysical organism dies from the toxicity of it.
Oh yeah.